maybe she's not as bad as I think she is. But what happens if you start feeling that way about everybody? Then you kind of lose who you are. If your job is to kind of freely point out that these people suck and you find out that maybe they don't, you might lose an audience. You might you might end up like if you were going and I've seen it on your show when you veer.
I've lost audience. Before many times, and I don't care. I care because it'd be great if it didn't happen.
Bill Maher invited Greg Gutfeld onto his podcast, Club Random, and in this episode, they got into a pretty intense debate over several topics, with the main focus being the woke movement and whether it has gone too far. As expected, Bill Maher disagreed, while Greg Gutfeld strongly agreed. Now, let's dive into this clip where the two clash, and in my opinion, Greg Gutfeld completely outdebates Bill Maher. Let's get into it.
I watched Rain Man again. I thought it held up pretty well. But again, you couldn't make it because, like, he says the R word a million times. It's like that kind of stuff. We're like in kindergarten now, where we have to say pee-pee and poo-poo and R word. And
Animal House. I think Animal House still holds up, but you could not do that movie, especially in the nightclub scene. Oh. Do you mind if we danced with your dates? That whole thing would never happen. It would never happen. That's the first time I ever saw breasts.
But it's every movie. It's every movie.
Yeah.
It's any movie made even 10 years ago. And there's something there that if you really examine who you are, you probably are not offended at all. We all laughed at this stuff and it wasn't terribly, we know when something's terribly offensive. But when you hear it now in 2023, you hunch up. Because not because of it itself, but because the reaction it will cause.
Yes.
You're going to have to listen to people bitching about this and posturing and pretending they're so offended and it's so terrible. And that's what's going to be so.
And they're not. That's the thing. They're not offended. Well, they're not. No one's really offended, I think.
Well,
because you can, when you said.
People are offended and some things are offensive.
Yeah, but it's kind of like when I said, do you Google people who are dead? When you're offensive, if you just waited 10 seconds, you would forget.
Right.
You would just forget. Instead, they get on Twitter and then they create this kind of mob reaction. And then people are so bored and they're so distracted that and also it's a personal power thing. It's like, if I don't have any power in my world, at least on here, I can exert some kind of power, get somebody to apologize. And it feels good. It feels good if I can get 1,000 retweets that Bill Maher said this and what an asshole and then it happens. It's but your life doesn't change. My life doesn't change by doing that. But I feel like I did something. And I think that's been driving a lot of this shit.
The phone made people assholes.
Yeah.
Full stop.
Yeah.
It allows you to just be so fucking cowardly, anonymous, shady, fake, all these shitty qualities it brought out in people.
Yeah.
So the fact that I was always seen as kind of a cynic about humans, I think that looks pretty good.
Yeah.
But it always seems to go in this direction. I hate to bring this up, especially during a rare wholesome moment between Greg Gutfeld and Bill Maher, but Bill inevitably reverts to his leftist stance. And it's not just about leftists. It's about the people truly in charge, the establishment, whatever you want to call them. The reason people today lack values, principles, and morals is because they've been told that Christianity is evil, traditional societal norms are oppressive, and concepts like the nuclear family, two genders, and heterosexuality are all fabricated or outdated. That's why people have lost their moral compass. Additionally, so many feel powerless, and social media gives them a sense of control. If they can cancel someone or get them fired, they feel like they have some influence. It's sad, but if you look at who is engaging in this behavior, it's always the left. It's always Bill Maher's side. I hate to interrupt this rare moment of agreement between Maher and Gutfeld, but the truth is, Maher's side is responsible for these issues. Meanwhile, right-wingers, Christians, and religious people uphold family and traditional values, leading to more stable, fulfilling lives. They believe in consequences for their actions, whether or not you personally think those beliefs are real. Their belief in a higher power holds them accountable, unlike people like Bill Maher, who acknowledge no higher authority. Without that, what stops someone from acting purely out of self-interest, with no regard for others? There's nothing stopping them, and that's exactly why they behave the way they do.
It's a bathroom wall. So you can write things on it and not be held accountable. But
it has repercussions, and a bathroom wall doesn't.
Yeah, it does. It destroys
all
careers.
All you do is go in there and roll your eyes because you're reading this.
Do you remember that girl that made that joke who, before she was leaving to fly to South Africa?
Oh, of course.
Yeah, and she said, I hope I don't get AIDS. That's a joke about America and about how we don't care about. And I remember, that was the first Twitter.
Yeah.
I think it's the first cancel culture moment.
I mean, that was if they haven't made a movie about it, they should.
Yeah.
Because by the time she got off the plane, her life was over.
There were people at the airport waiting for her because it felt so good to get somebody. And I can't remember her name, but she, I don't like what happened to her. I'm going to Google her when we're done.
No, there used to be, if something like that happened, I think there was this allowance for someone to then go, oh, fuck, okay, you got me. It was a brain fart. I'm sorry, you're right. That was a shitty thing to do. And that was that.
Yeah.
And that should be all that, because people, what I hate is the bad faith of people who know that this person isn't a horrible person, but I'm going to wreck your life anyway. Because if there's one misstep and not a hanging offense.
Yeah.
Especially if you own it. But no, with these people, it's never good enough.
Yeah. I would say that.
Just like blood.
I would say that I was guilty of that, though. Like in the beginning that you disagree with, you said it was like you take them at their worst intentions, not their best. Everything that's going on right now in our lives is based on people taking the worst intention.
Yeah, exactly.
Doesn't matter if you're a conservative and you don't like liberals, you will take the worst example of a liberal, and a liberal will take the worst example of a conservative, and they both are almost identical. Like the squad is the same as whoever you want to call on the conservative side. They're exactly the same.
There is a lot of that.
Yeah, and and the thing is, it's really funny when I make fun of like Ilhan Omar, and then she'll say something that I agree with. And I'm like
what?
She was pretty good. That's a good question. There were two things that she said. She was pissed off about what was going on in Palestine, not Palestine, but Palestine.
Oh,
and, yeah.
I'm glad
it wasn't Palestine.
I was,
but she was talking about but there were some other things that she said that I thought were like, wow, that's pretty libertarian, because generally she's kind of scary, but like maybe she's not as bad as I think she is. But what happens if you start feeling that way about everybody? Then you kind of lose who you are. If your job is to kind of freely point out that these people suck, and you find out that maybe they don't, you might lose an audience. You might you might end up like if you were going and I've seen it on your show when you veer.
I've lost audience.
Yeah.
Many times, and I don't care. I care because it'd be great if it didn't happen. But my real bond with my audience is that I never pull a punch.
Yeah.
And I never. I have lost people who were think I'm conservative now, and I have not changed. I don't think at all.
No.
I think the politics has changed and the people have changed. But I don't think that it makes me a conservative to, think things that are crazy are crazy.
Yeah.
And forcing me to say so doesn't help.
Yeah.
There's just too much forced conformity.
Yeah.
And there's no thinking out loud.
Yeah.
That's not allowed.
Yeah. I remember watching your show a couple times when you would actually feel, I could see you genuinely disappointed when people applauded for what you would think would be a red meat comment. Like,
Correct.
It's kind of like, it's like, because I do the same thing. It's like, I know that it's really easy to bash Biden or anybody. And then, so we have I joke about it. I go, well, that was red meat. And I go, so that's funny to you. But if I do anything else, it's not funny. It's like, but they're not living in the world that we live in. So maybe this is, this is their outlet. I don't know. But I noticed that when you do that, you just kind of go.
You can tell from what Bill Maher just said that he gave us a little peek behind the curtain in his exchange with Greg Gutfeld. Maher is essentially complaining that he can't even push back slightly against woke ideology without being labeled a conservative or Republican, labels that he clearly doesn't identify with. Meanwhile, Gutfeld fires back, saying he doesn't care what people call him and is just going to speak the truth. This reveals a lot about Maher's mindset when he creates his content. Everything he says is calculated. I believed for a long time that Maher wants to take a stronger stance against the woke movement, not necessarily becoming MAGA, but joining the fight against the so-called woke weirdos. However, he holds back because he's afraid of the backlash and the impact on his career. Every time he criticizes Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, or woke culture, whether on Real Time with Bill Maher or in other settings, he always follows it up with a dig at Donald Trump or Republicans. He does this out of fear of the repercussions. On the other hand, Greg Gutfeld doesn't care. He just says what he believes to be true. That's the same mindset I have. I know my opinions on topics like the Middle East, abortion, and religion upset people, and I probably make some viewers angry. But I won't change who I am just to avoid backlash. The reality is, people might get mad for a few minutes, but then they move on. No one's walking around furious all day because of something Bill Maher said. If you are, you need to rethink your priorities. However, the woke crowd operates differently. They make it their mission to cancel and ruin the careers of those who disagree with them. That forces people into two choices: either conform entirely to the woke agenda or reject it and go in the opposite direction. That's why figures like Joe Rogan and Russell Brand have moved away from it, and why Ana Kasparian is starting to do the same. I believe Maher wants to follow that path, but he's too afraid of the professional consequences.
20 years, the first, I would say, at least 15, I was probably fighting with the audience, at least once a show. Mm-hmm. It was very rare I had an audience that didn't like ooh and ah something. Then somebody did some, part of it was the pandemic. We had to get a smaller audience. Right. And so somehow they knew how to get rid of just the groaners. Yeah. And so we stuck with it even after the pandemic ended, and we could have as many as we want now. But I was like, no, I'd much rather have this half filled, but they're the good people who they can laugh at both sides. Right. They cheer both things. They cheer common sense. Yeah. And that made my life so much better. And I know people who miss it. They're like, oh, I loved it when you would say, give the crowd the finger or tell them something. I don't know. And it was true. I mean, because I'm not one of those comics who can just pretend. It's no, if you're being oversensitive, I'm going to bust you on it because you're an audience. This is a comedy show. The fucking sign over my head says Real Time or it says politically incorrect. Why are you here if you're not here to be open-minded and willing to laugh at a lot of stuff and oohing and ahhing this? You can go to every other kind of show in town, the taping, and you'll be absolutely in the perfect setting for that, for being full of shit.
I just wish Bill Maher would fully come over to this side, but you can tell he's hesitant. It's interesting because, in this moment, he's speaking the truth. Greg Gutfeld has clearly put him in a mindset where he's ready to go after the woke crowd. At first, Maher was just venting about how frustrating it is to be labeled a Republican simply for calling out nonsense. But Gutfeld's attitude of not caring seems to have rubbed off on him. Now, Maher's fired up, saying that when he performs in red states, the audience laughs at everything. They appreciate common sense. Meanwhile, in blue states, audiences are stiff and uptight, which should be proof enough that woke ideology is suffocating. I just don't understand why he still hesitates to leave it behind. Anyway, let me know in the comments what you think about Greg Gutfeld appearing on Club Random, Maher's podcast, and challenging his views. You could literally see Maher opening up in real time, taking shots at the woke culture, and admitting how miserable they are to perform in front of. It's wild. Let me know your thoughts on this whole Greg Gutfeld versus Bill Maher situation.